we are exploring the layers of a chilling tale that blurs the line between reality and supernatural. We'll take a closer look at the mysterious events surrounding a cursed object, a vengeful spirit, and the dark secrets that lead to an unexpected twist. Get ready to join us as we unpack the story behind Oddity, revealing the unsettling connections and spine-tingling moments that define this haunting narrative. Stay tuned and let's uncover the truth together. This video contains major spoilers from the movie Oddity. If you haven't watched the film yet and want to experience the story firsthand, we recommend watching it before continuing with this video. Viewer discretion is advised. But before we get started, I have a small request. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Now with that having said, let's roll the intro. The movie begins with a girl named Denny, who is seen moving into her new county house. The house is under renovation. It is a very big house. Denny's husband, Dr. Ted, is a psychiatrist at a psychiatric hospital. From a phone call between Ted and Denny, we learn that Ted is working at night shifts, leaving Denny alone in the new house. Inside the house, a camera is set up near the main entrance, taking photos every few seconds. We are also introduced to the psychiatric hospital where Ted works, which houses some pretty unsettling patients. One of them always wears a mask because he's cannibal, and another is a patient who constantly draws. That night, Denny steps out of a car to grab her jacket, and when she returns to the house and looks through the door, a strange man named Olin suddenly appears. Denny talks to Olin through the peephole of the door. He aggressively insists that Denny let him in, claiming that she left the door open when she was near her car, and at that time somebody entered into the house. Olin, who has a prosthetic eye, says he just wants to help Denny and that there is someone inside the house who might harm her. Denny quickly realizes that Olin is actually a patient from Ted's hospital who was released earlier that day. She threatens to call the police, but Olin dares her to do so, stating that she might be able to escape if the police arrive quickly. Unfortunately, Denny had left her phone in the car, so she couldn't call the police. As viewers, we start to wonder if Olin might be telling the truth. Denny seems to be considering the same. She steps forward to open the door, and the scene abruptly cuts off. The scene then shifts back to the psychiatric hospital, where the patient who was drawing earlier is now facing a troubling situation. He hears some noises, and when he checks a nearby room, he finds the mutilated corpse of another patient, with the head severely injured and the drawing destroyed. The patient responsible is holding the prosthetic eye, and we immediately realize that it's Olin's eye. The dead patient was Olin. The scene then transitions and we are introduced to a woman named Darcy, who is revealed to be Danny's twin sister. Darcy has a unique ability. She can perceive things about people by touching their personal items, particularly those in contact with skin for a long period, like rings or necklaces. Darcy runs a shop called Oddity, where she sells cursed or strange items such as dolls, rings, or bells. Ted visits Darcy's shop, and we understand the story has now jumped forward by almost a year from the first scene. However, the movie has yet to reveal what ultimately happened to Denny.
At this point, we understand that Denny was killed that night. From the conversation between Darcy and Ted, it becomes clear that Ted asked Darcy to help him understand why Olin killed her sister Denny, and whether Olin felt any regret for his actions. Even though Olin was now dead, Ted brought his prosthetic eye to Darcy, hoping that by touching it, she might uncover the truth. Darcy then shares story behind one of her cursed objects in her shop, a haunted bell. The bell, similar to those seen at hotel receptions, has its sinister story. The story goes that a bellboy who had worked his entire life at a hotel was shot by a drunken guest on the stairs, breaking his neck. After the bellboy's death, the hotel hired a new bellboy, but whenever someone rang the bell, the ghost of the dead bellboy would appear and kill the person who rang it. Essentially, Darcy explains that if this cursed bell was rung, the spirit of the bellboy would come and kill whoever triggered it. Naturally, Ted, being a man of science, didn't believe in this story. But before leaving, Ted casually invited Darcy to visit him, saying she should stay at his place for a week. It was an invitation that felt more like a formality. However, both Darcy and the viewers learned something strange. Ted had already moved on from Danny's death and was now living with his new girlfriend, Yana. Yana was a pharmaceutical representative who had been working at Ted's hospital. After Ted leaves, Darcy touched Olin's prosthetic eye, and in a flash, she saw the moment when Olin killed Danny. Now we finally understand everything about Danny's death. By the end of the video, we'll finally uncover what exactly happened the night Danny died. As the story progresses, Darcy brings a wooden box into the scene. As she gets closer, there is an ominous feeling that something horrible is inside the box, perhaps cursed object. Then the focus shifts to the outskirts, where Danny once lived in the house that Ted had renovated. Ted is still working night shifts, and Yana expresses her fear of staying in the house alone at night. Yana discovers Danny's old camera, which still had photos and videos of Danny and Ted. The strange thing is that Yana had taken a random photo with the camera just 2 days ago, but somehow Danny appeared in that photograph. Given that Danny died a year ago, Yana is puzzled how Danny could be in such a recent photo. Although disturbed by this, she tries to brush it off and goes about her evening. At this point, Yana reveals that a parcel had arrived at their home earlier that day. It was a wooden box we saw at Darcy's shop. In fact, Darcy had sent this parcel to Ted's house. Then, out of nowhere, Darcy herself arrives at the house. Yana and Ted are clearly not thrilled to see her, but Darcy reminds them that Ted had invited her to stay for a week. Despite their discomfort, they drop hints that Darcy should leave, especially since Ted is leaving for his night shift and Yana doesn't want to stay alone in the house. But Darcy insists on staying, and since she's adamant, Ted reluctantly agrees. Before leaving, Ted opens the wooden box Darcy brought, revealing a strange life-sized mannequin inside. Darcy explains that this is a gift for Ted and that the mannequin belonged to her mother, who was known as a witch. This creepy revelation further emphasizes Darcy's connection to the odd and cursed objects. Ted heads off to work, leaving Yana alone with Darcy. Yana, feeling uneasy, decides to leave the house, but when she tries to find her car keys, they mysteriously disappear, making matters worse. Mannequin, which was originally in the box, is now sitting on the table. Darcy casually mentions that she didn't move the mannequin or place the car keys there, which unsettles Yana even more. With no choice but to stay, Yana reluctantly decides to bring food for Darcy, and the two start talking. During their conversation, Darcy reveals something shocking. Danny wasn't foolish enough to open the door for Olin that night. Someone else has entered the house that night. In fact, and Darcy believes it was the person who killed Danny. A flashback scene is shown, revealing that Danny didn't open the door for Olin. She checked the cameras inside her house. Instead, same cameras that took photos every few seconds. To her horror, Danny saw a figure entering the house in one of the photos. Panicked, she ran into a tent inside her house. But when she opened the tent, she was confronted by a masked man holding a hammer. In the next moment, the masked man attacked and killed Danny with the hammer. Returning to the present, Yana is skeptical of Darcy's claims, especially the idea that Darcy can discover someone's past just by touching their belongings. Yana asks Darcy if Olin didn't kill Danny, then who did? Darcy reveals that Danny was actually killed by Ivan, an orderly at the hospital where Ted works. We then see some scenes of Ivan mistreating patients at the hospital and notice that Ivan seems to be very close to Ted. From their conversations, it is clear that Ted and Ivan have a history together. The day before, Ivan was shocked to meet Darcy and noticed how much she and Danny resemble each other, especially in their eyes and hairstyle. Back in the present, Darcy asks Yana when she started dating Ted and whether she was with him while Danny was still alive. This question makes Yana uncomfortable and she hesitantly responds. Yana explains that Ted was just a friend while Danny was alive and that he only wanted to date her after Danny's death. As Darcy talks, she eventually dozes off and Yana seizes the moment to call Ted. She informs him that Darcy claims Ivan, not Olin, was the one who killed kill Denny. Ted seems unnerved by this, which is unusual, making Yana feel more uneasy. At that moment, Yana feels the mannequin is moving and she becomes so terrified that she accidentally drops her phone, which crashes down to the floor and breaks it. Yana goes downstairs to check on the mannequin and finds something more disturbing. There are 5 holes in the mannequin's head. Inside these holes, she discovers strange items. Here, in one hole, photos of Darcy and Denny, both as a child and as adult. In 2 others, a human tooth in another, and a test tube filled with blood in the last one. The eerie contents make Yana think that Darcy might have casted some kind of spell. Suddenly, Darcy wakes up and yells at Yana to put everything back in the holes. Terrified, Yana quickly replaces all the items and puts the mannequin back in its original position. But as she lies down, she sees Darcy's ghost on the camera. In fact, Yana sometimes feels like Denny's ghost is actually in the room with her. Overcome with fear, Yana runs out to the room and went down where Darcy is sleeping. In a panic, Yana searches for her car keys and finally finds them in the mannequin box. Without wasting any more time, she rushes to her car and drives away from the house as fast as she can. As all these events unfold, Ted returns home to find Darcy alone on the first floor. At this point, Darcy reveals that she knows that Ted was dating Jana while Denny was alive. Darcy goes on to tell that he was the one who wanted Denny killed. She explains that Ivan was simply following Ted's orders. In fact, it was Ted who instructed Ivan to murder Denny. As for Olin, Darcy admits that she killed him, believing him to be her sister's killer. However, she later discovered the truth by touching Olin's prosthetic eye. Darcy reflects on how she was punished for wrongfully killing Olin by losing her own life. We are then shown a scene where Ted and Ivan discuss the situation. Ted had instructed Ivan to kill Denny because Ted had started an affair with Yana and didn't want to confront Denny face to face. Ted believed that Denny loved him too much to leave him and that she would be completely heartbroken. When Ivan suggested that Ted simply divorce Denny, Ted explained that he had put all his money into the house, and if they divorced, the house would go to Denny. This made Ted determined that Denny had to die. The same day, Olin was released from the hospital, went straight to Denny's house trying to save her. Unfortunately, Olin couldn't save her and was later blamed for her murder, leading to his readmission to the hospital. Returning to the present, Ted is shocked that Darcy knows all of this. He tries to act innocent, pretending that he isn't a murderer and that Darcy is the one who is crazy. Darcy then taunts Ted, telling him to have Ivan kill her, but he swears that he will never do that, and Darcy swears that she'll kill Ivan herself. Ted decides to play a trick on Darcy. He leaves a phone in front of her and tells her that he is going to call the detective who is in charge of the case to show all the evidence pointing to Olin as murderer. However, Ted's plan is a trap. There is a large hole between the phone and Darcy that she should easily fall through, but Darcy is blind. She doesn't see the hole. As she moves forward to pick up the phone, she falls through the hole and gets badly injured. Ted then rushes to the hospital and speaks with Ivan, asking if Ivan had told Darcy anything, because somehow Darcy knows the entire truth, something that only Ivan and Ted were supposed to know. Ivan had recently met Darcy. Ivan confirms that he did not meet Darcy, insists that he didn't reveal anything to her. Ted starts to doubt everything, especially since Ivan didn't believe in witchcraft. Ted sends Ivan to his house with instructions to kill Darcy in case she somehow survives the fall. Ivan arrives to find Darcy badly injured and losing a lot of blood. Despite her weakened state, Darcy manages to perform some sort of ritual with her hand, and the mannequin suddenly comes to life and attacks Ivan. Though Darcy doesn't survive the attack before she dies, she sees the spirit of her sister Denny smiling at her. This shows that Denny's spirit had been in the house for all along, but it wasn't strong enough to take revenge or harm anyone. The scene then cuts to the hospital where Ivan is admitted. Despite the mannequin's attack, Ivan is still alive but badly injured. Ted visits him and Ivan tells Ted that the mannequin come to life and attacked him. Ted, who can't believe what he is hearing, tells Ivan that he returned home that night and burned the mannequin. While he was burning it, the mannequin didn't move at all. Ted dismisses Ivan's story, but Ivan, genuinely terrified and wants to confess his sins. Ted, realizing that Ivan's confession could implicate him as well, devises a plan to eliminate Ivan. He arranges for the hospital's most dangerous patient, a cannibal, to be left in Ivan's room. The patient ends up killing and eating Ivan. After this, we see Ted returning home. From the voicemail on his phone, we learn that Yana has broken up with him. She couldn't bear to stay in a house where Danny died and where Darcy also met her end. Now alone, receives a parcel from the oddity shop. Inside, he finds the same cursed bell that Darcy sold at her shop. Ted, who doesn't believe in ghosts, rings the bell to test if anything will happen. Checks around, but nothing seems to move, and there are no signs of a ghost. Relieved, Ted smiles to himself and breathes a sigh of relief. However, in the last scene of the movie, as Ted sits comfortably, we see the ghost of the bellboy standing behind him. The movie ends with this eerie image, leaving the audience with the implication that the curse is real and that Ted is about to meet his end. So that was the story and ending of Oddity. Ted, in his arrogance, dismissed the idea of the supernatural, but the ringing of the cursed bell summoned the bellboy's ghost, which is now going to kill Ted. It seems Darcy had a backup plan in case she couldn't kill Ted herself, sending the cursed bell to ensure Ted's demise. Ted, a man of science, couldn't resist the temptation to prove Darcy wrong, which ultimately led to his downfall. As for Yana, she was left alive because she had no part in Danny's murder. He was just caught in Ted's web of lies, didn't know what kind of person Ted really was. Now let's talk about the film Oddity. While it may be hailed as the scariest movie of the year, I didn't find it particularly terrifying. However, I do think the film is quite good and definitely builds tension. If you're looking for a movie with a lot of horror, you might be disappointed. But if you watch it with the expectation of a regular horror movie, you'll enjoy it because it's well presented, even if the horror is predictable. That was my full explanation of the film Oddity. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share it, and don't forget to subscribe if you're new to the channel. Until next time, stay safe and stay informed. Shot by a drunken guest on the stairs, breaking his neck. After the bellboy's death, the hotel hired a new bellboy, but whenever someone rang the bell, the ghost of the dead bellboy would appear and kill the person who rang it. Essentially, Darcy explains that if this cursed bell was rung, the spirit of the bellboy would come and kill whoever triggered it. Naturally, Ted, being a man of science, didn't believe in the story, but before leaving, Ted casually invited Darcy to visit him, saying she should stay at his place for a week. It was an invitation that felt more like a formality. However, both Darcy and the viewers learned something strange. Ted had already moved on from Danny's death and was now living with his new girlfriend, Yana. Yana was a pharmaceutical representative who had been working at Ted's hospital. After Ted leaves, Darcy touched Olin's prosthetic eye, and in a flash, she saw the moment when Olin killed Danny. Now we finally understand everything about Danny's death. By the end of the video, we'll finally uncover what exactly happened the night Danny died. As the story progresses, Darcy brings a wooden box into the scene. As she gets closer, there is an ominous feeling that something horrible is inside the box. Perhaps cursed object. Then the focus shifts to the outskirts where Danny once lived in the house that Ted had renovated. Ted is still working night shifts, and Yana expresses her fear of staying in the house alone at night. Yana discovers Danny's old camera, which still had photos and videos of Danny and Ted. The strange thing is that Yana had taken a random photo with the camera just 2 days ago, but somehow Danny appeared in that photo. Given that Danny died a year ago, Yana is puzzled how Danny could be in such a recent photo. Although disturbed by this, she tries to brush it off and goes about her evening. At this point, Yana reveals that a parcel had arrived at their home earlier that day. It was a wooden box we saw at Darcy's shop. In fact, Darcy had sent this parcel to Ted's house. Then, out of nowhere, Darcy herself arrives at the house. Yana and Ted are clearly not thrilled to see her, but Darcy reminds them that Ted had invited her to stay for a week. Despite their discomfort, they drop hints that Darcy should leave, especially since Ted is leaving for his night shift and Yana doesn't want to stay alone in the house. But Darcy insists on staying, and since she's adamant, Ted reluctantly agrees. Before leaving, Ted opens the wooden box Darcy brought, revealing a strange life-sized mannequin inside. Darcy explains that this is a gift for Ted and that the mannequin belonged to her mother, who was known as a witch. This creepy revelation further emphasizes Darcy's connection to the odd and cursed